Baku, a breath to spark the human heart. Hi there, friends, family. Welcome to the Baku podcast. I'm Mark Philpott, and I hope that this podcast finds you well. You know, whenever you're listening to it, wherever you are, whoever you are, right at this moment as these words hit your eardrums, I really hope that they bring a little bit of a spark to your day, a little bit of a point of reflection for you to think about, something to discuss with your friends, with your family, a bit of a welcome distraction. Because hey, right now here in Victoria, I know a lot of people are having a really tough time under these COVID restrictions. A lot of people now limited to 2 hours a day outside their home for a little bit of exercise. And it's really starting to wear pretty thin for a lot of people. So hey, thanks so much that you have taken the time, given whatever circumstances you're in, just to be part of this conversation. And look, I'm going to do my very best to bring you some words that spark a little inspiration, bring a little bit of light, and something a bit different to your week. Something hopefully that you can look forward to, something hopefully that can make a little bit of a difference in the way that you're thinking and feeling. Perhaps it's renewing a sense of purpose. Perhaps it's finding some little tools or references that you can go and search out for yourself to help guide you on your way, wherever that way may take you. And hopefully it's to a much better place. So thanks for joining me today for episode 6 of the Baku podcast. So last week on the Baku podcast, I told a little folklore tale about Jesus of G-Town as he spits in the dirt, makes mud, plasters it in Blind Bob's eyes. Of course, we talked about the dirt representing those behaviours that we kind of pick up unconsciously, that become habit, that maybe aren't particularly good for us or good for the people around us. And we talked about the spit as being like the glue that makes that dirt stick. So if it's stuck in our eyes, we just can't see clearly. We can't get a good look at ourselves, so it clouds our insight, and it starts to colour and block our vision of the world around us, our perception, our attitude towards the world around us. And sometimes, when we become aware of that mud in our eyes, there's a moment, there's something that sparks something in us, and we think, right, that's it, it's time to make a change. The way things are going, these limiting beliefs, these beliefs that hold me back from being who I am truly called to be, from being the best human being that I can be, from loving people more, from being more generous, from being more compassionate, those beliefs need to go, and we need something new. We need some new empowering beliefs. Beliefs that do build us up to be more loving, more kind, more compassionate, more generous, more of all the good stuff that we need more of in the world. So I made the claim that once we understand what this mud is in our eyes, and we start to name those beliefs, we start to identify the ones that are really holding us back, then making a change becomes quite easy. So today, I want to dig a little bit more into that. And I want to start with looking at the nuts and bolts, the mechanics of how beliefs work, followed by a couple of steps that you can take yourself, or with the help of a friend or a therapist, to actually make some lasting changes, to make some changes that matter to you, that matter to your families, that matter to your friends, to your communities. Or if things are going really well, great. These are just a couple of little tools you can have in your back pocket to share with a friend. Or perhaps, as sometimes happens in life, things come out of the blue, things unexpected happen, and we're left with a situation, perhaps we're caught in circumstances that are beyond our control. But what is always within our control is our beliefs. And when we're conscious of that, we can shape those beliefs to truly reflect who we are and our most authentic and deep sense of who we are. So let's get to the nuts and bolts of how this system works. So if you think about the experience of learning to drive a car, to begin with, you're probably 16, 17, pimply teenage kid hopping behind the wheel of your mum, dad, auntie, uncle's godmother, fairy godmother's car. And you sit in that driver's seat and you think, geez, that this is it. I've seen this done 1,000 times. It's going to be easy, right? And whoever's teaching you to drive hops in the passenger seat and they point out to you, first thing they point out to you is the pedal on the left, or in the middle if you're driving a manual car. They point out that big black pedal and they say, right, put your right foot on that. That's your brakes. You see that pedal to the right? That's your accelerator. See this? This is your gear stick. This is your handbrake. This is your steering wheel, right? And that's pretty much all you need to know about the workings of the car to get you driving. So for most of us, understanding, all right, here's the steering wheel, the ignition, the brake, the accelerator, the gears, the handbrake, that's actually enough to get the car driving. So we head out maybe into like a little quiet road or a car park, and we start to understand how to take that car for a drive. And this knowledge of the car and how complicated it is and how the way it works, this simple understanding is more than enough for us to begin to learn the skill of driving. And it's more than enough right up until you find yourself stuck in the Northern Territory on the side of the Stuart Highway with black, burning, rubbery, oily smell filling the vehicle, and you're stranded with no mobile phone reception, hours and hours from the nearest town, which is exactly where Tilly and I found ourselves as we were crossing the Northern Territory about 10 years ago in our old Toyota Hiace, when we were driving along and a little hiss from the engine bay turned into a loud squeal, and as we pulled over, it was a very dramatic bang like a crack of lightning. We popped the hood, which is actually the passenger seat in the Hiace, the whole van filled with black smoke and smell, and we were fairly rattled, to say the least. So we sat by the side of this road and we thought, look, there's no mobile phone reception. We'll just have to wait for somebody to come along and help us out. So we sat there and we waited. Dingoes the size of greyhounds started appearing as dusk began to fall. I really had to go to the toilet. And in the middle of the desert, there are no toilets. In fact, there was barely even a bush. So I had to leave Tilly in the van and walk a couple hundred meters across the desert to find a bush. And just as I got to the bush and was beginning to relieve myself, a four-wheel drive pulled up and a guy hopped out. I thought, right, we're going to miss this opportunity. And I quickly finished my business and ran back to the van. And this guy was kind enough to head to the nearest service station, which we estimated was probably another hour down the road, to call the RACV and send them back to where we were. So we waited again for a couple more hours. By this time it's dark. It's really dark. It's getting cold in the desert at that time. And the RACV tow truck turned up, hauled the van onto the back of the tow truck without really giving it a second look, and then turned around and drove us 2 hours back in the opposite direction to the direction we had been travelling, back to the little town of Elliot. Now, Elliot is not much of a town. There's very little there, and we were dropped at some dingy little caravan park with a cyclone wire fence around the outside, and we were told by this pretty gruff tow truck driver that somebody would be there to see us in the morning. and we could have a look at the van then. So, learning to drive your mind, learning to drive a car, have some similarities. Sure, when things are going well, when you're just setting out, when the car's in good nick and it hasn't seen too many troubles, then we only need a really basic level understanding of how things work. But as happens, as we put a few Ks on the clock, as life becomes more complex with different responsibilities and challenges, which are both enriching and also can cause us some stress at times, both good and bad, then sometimes we need to dig a little deeper into our understanding of how these beliefs systems work so that we can learn to drive our mind and so that we can learn to maintain our mind in a way that is helpful to us, to the people around us, and to our communities. So our beliefs act a little bit like a filter for our experience of life. And look, the easiest way to demonstrate this, rather than trying to explain it, is to show you. So what I'd like you to do right now, if it's safe to do so, so if you're driving a car, this won't work. If you're listening to this to help you fall asleep because you enjoy the sound of my voice, then this won't work for you right now either. You will need the lights on, and you will need to be somewhere where you can just pay attention to your surroundings for a few minutes. So what I'd like you to do is just, where you are right now, take a look around the room, and I want you to really pay attention to everything in that room that is green. Okay, so anything in the room that is green, just take a look around the room and just make a mental list. Just take notes in your mind. No pens and paper allowed. Just take some notes in your mind of everything that you can see in your room where you're standing right now, or in your environment, wherever that happens to be. Everything that you can see that is green, okay? Okay, so your 30 seconds starts now. Okay, so I'm going to jump back in here. And what I'd like you to do is, now that you've taken a look around the room, you've looked at everything in the room that's green, you've done a really good job of observing that. Now what I'd like you to do is to close your eyes. As long as it's safe, just close your eyes now. And in your mind, I'd like you to make a mental list of all the things that you saw that were red. Okay, everything that you saw that was red, I want you to make a mental list in your mind without opening your eyes. No cheating, no peeking. Just make a little list in your mind of all the things that you noticed in the room that were red. Okay. And if you're feeling a little scrambled, you should be. So just make that little list in your mind. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and take a second look around the room, and this time, notice all the things that are red. Did you get them? Did you notice them all? If you're like most of us, you probably didn't. And the reason is you were cued in to look for all the green things in the room. And that's just a short-term cue. That's a short-term idea that I planted to look around the room for all the things that were green, that cued you in to pay attention to those things, but you only held that command in your mind in your short-term memory. And you think, if we repeat that command over and over again, and we're to go through life just observing everything that's green all the time, that command eventually slips from our short-term memory into our long-term memory, into our subconscious belief system, and it starts to filter the way we experience the whole world around us. So when we have beliefs like the world is a kind and caring place, guess what our mind pays attention to? That's right, all the things that are kind and caring. If we have beliefs like there's never enough money, guess what our mind will find for us? Or if we have beliefs like I'm not very fit, again, guess what our mind will find for us? You see, because not only do our beliefs filter the world around us so that it's easier for us to process the abundance of information that is actually there, they also become magnetic and reinforce themselves. Whatever belief we hold, we'll tend to find reasons to reinforce that belief to us on a subconscious level. So, over time, and by the age of about 7, as a Greek philosopher Aristotle once said, give me a child until he's 7 and I will show you the man. Particularly before the age of 7, when we started with a blank slate, our mind's being shaped to pay attention to the world in a particular way, usually through the filters of our parents. And it's not until we hit a point where perhaps that belief system stops really serving us, or perhaps we just cotton onto an idea like life doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to settle for the way things are. There's a different perspective, a different view of the world that may be more empowering. And sometimes there's little sparks that call our attention to a belief that might be limiting our capacity to be the best that we can be in some part of our lives, comes quite unexpectedly. In fact, this week, I think early this week, maybe Monday or Tuesday, I was out surfing, and I've noticed this guy in the surf that has been surfing the same spot as me a couple of times over the last few weeks. And we had a little bit of a chat, and I found out a little bit about him, and he's got a wife and a child, a 3-month-old baby that he seemed so proud of. His face was beaming as he told me about this child and the lovely walk they'd had that morning on the Esplanade. And he said, I said, oh, you sound so proud of your little baby boy. Sounds like you're really enjoying being a father. And he says, yeah. Do you really enjoy being a father? And it took me a moment to answer. And there's a little inflection in my voice. Sometimes. And at that moment caused me to stop and reflect. I had to check in and say, well, how do I feel about this being a father? What is my attitude or my belief towards myself as a parent? I mean, parenting is one of those funny things. We often launch into parenting without a whole lot of understanding about what the experience really involves. And it can be tough. We had sleep deprivation for the first couple of years of our lives. And on and off, there are days where I'm no good. I can't do anything right. There's anger, there's tantrums. And a lot of the time it's because you're trying to put some boundaries in place to say, no, you can't eat ice cream for breakfast, or, yeah, look, I do need some space to be able to cross the living room. We'll have to put some Lego away, or, you know what, you will need to put your clothes on to go to daycare because we've got things to do, places to go, people to see. And all of a sudden you get the I don't love yous, you're a bad person, all this stuff, the tears, and it breaks your heart. And unexpectedly, you find yourself experiencing emotions that you didn't picture yourself feeling in that moment. You kind of knew that parenting would have these tough spots. There'd be these times of challenge, and there would be things that you'd have to do that didn't necessarily feel nice at the time but were good in the long term. But it breaks your heart when that little person looks up at you with dark eyes, crying, and says, I don't love you. And kids will do that. The scary part comes when those automatic emotional responses kick in that may also lead to those automatic thoughts associated with those beliefs that we developed as a young child. And the one that comes to mind for me is one that my mum used to say in these situations of discomfort, and that is, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Not particularly empathetic or understanding words, not particularly compassionate, not particularly helpful to a young child. And I'd completely forgotten about this until I found it automatically popping into my head in response to my own son's behaviours. So fortunately, I'm not really a very reactive person. So even though I had these feelings and I had this automatic thought of, if you don't stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about, I didn't act on it, I didn't say it. But I've had to sit with this discomfort, and it started to colour my perception, my beliefs about what it means to be a father, about how joyful parenting can be. So I realised this is something that I really needed to change. And the first step is calling attention to it. It's to identify that belief. The second part to changing that belief is to evaluate it. Does this belief serve me well? Does it serve my kids well, my spouse well, the community, the world? And the answer, of course, to that particular belief is no, that belief doesn't serve me well, it doesn't serve my family well, it doesn't serve the people around me well. So it has to go. So after I've evaluated that belief, the third step is letting go of the old to make room for the new. And a big part of letting go of that old belief is acknowledging where it came from and giving yourself permission to forgive that person. And if that's a parent, great. You may not even have the opportunity, like my mum's dead, so there's no opportunity for conversation there. But that's okay. I understand she was doing the best she could at the time with the social and the emotional and the knowledge resources that she had available to her. So this isn't about blaming anyone. It's about doing the best that we can to move ourselves forward in a way that means we don't reinforce the limiting beliefs that perhaps we've grown up with in our children or the people around us. So let go of that old belief. Acknowledge it, evaluate it, let go of it, and go through the process of forgiving whoever may have been involved in helping to instill that belief in you in the first place. So the fourth and final part, or step, the fourth and final step to changing your beliefs, of course, after you've identified what that limiting belief is, you've evaluated it, you've decided that it's time to let it go, you've gone through the process of forgiveness, is to install the new belief. And changing the belief is just as easy as changing other things that need to be changed. Like the toilet roll when you're out of toilet paper in the bathroom. But just because it's easy to change doesn't mean that you necessarily do it, because it does require some effort. And that little bit of effort initially goes a long way. So, installing a new belief. There are lots of different ways to do this, but basically the premise is the same as the way the initial limiting belief was installed in the first place. Last week I actually had another chat with a mate and we talked about liturgy. So in a church setting, every Sunday in a more traditional church service, you turn up and you say the same prayers word for word. You repeat the same creeds word for word week after week. And over time it moves from your short-term memory into your long-term memory. If you haven't done this, perhaps you can relate to learning the words to one of your favourite songs. Initially, you get some of the words right, you make a few bits up, you get a couple of words wrong, which can be funny. And over time, the more you listen to that song, the more it becomes embedded in your mind, the more it moves from your short-term memory to your long-term memory, and it becomes something that's easy to recall. So, when we're creating the replacement belief, there are 3 P's that I want to bring to your attention. The first is, frame it in the present. So, whatever this new belief is, state it as if it's happening right now. Second P, powerful. Use really powerful emotions. Emotions of joy and gratitude work best. And number 3, use positive language. Now this one's really important. Positive language is the only language that your subconscious brain understands. So do this for me. In your mind's eye, I want you to picture the bedspread on your bed at home. Okay? Now, however you want to represent that to yourself is fine. If you can close your eyes and see a picture of that. If you just want to say the word bedspread and remind yourself, oh yeah, it's the pink and purple polka dot one or whatever it is. Or perhaps it's the feeling that you get from that bedspread. Whatever it is, however you want to represent that bedspread to yourself, just call that image to your mind right now of your bedspread at home. Now, what I'd like you to do is just change that bedspread so that instead of being whatever it is, I want you to change it so now it's blue and it's old and it's faded and it's made of denim. Okay, so just change that image, because what this does is it just demonstrates how easily our minds can create pictures of what is and how easily they can change and manipulate those pictures to be something slightly different, to twist it into something else through conscious instructions. So now, whatever you do, do not picture that bedspread in your mind's eye. Do not picture that bedspread in your mind's eye. And I bet you, on some level, before your mind was able to cancel that picture out or that image out, you had to first to create the image. And this is why positive language is so important when it comes to installing new beliefs. Because if you have a belief like, I don't want to be an angry person anymore, I do not want to be an angry person anymore, unfortunately all your subconscious brain hears is angry person, and it has to keep recreating that picture of the angry person before it's able to cancel it out. And over time, of course, this just reinforces that image of who we are as an angry person, and it becomes counterproductive to our conscious intention. So, frame it in the present, attach powerful emotions, and use positive language. And here's the example of what I've created for myself as a new belief about who I am as a father. I am overjoyed and grateful to be a father. I have a fantastic son. I'm privileged to watch him grow to become more confident in who he is. And I'm proud to be his father. And that's it. I'm overjoyed and grateful. There's my positive emotions. To be a father, that's what the intention's about. I have a fantastic son. More positive emotions. I'm privileged to watch him grow to become more confident in who he is. There's the intention. He's becoming more confident in who he is. And I'm proud to be his father. Again, more positive emotions. All stated in positive language, and it's framed as if now I am. And this is how we create a new belief. We write it down. You can even pull out your phone, use the voice recorder, record it, and put it on repeat. So at some stage, set an alarm and repeat it to yourself throughout the day, throughout the week. The more often you repeat it, the more quickly it moves from a conscious intention to a subconscious intention. The quicker it starts to frame your perspective of the world in a way that brings you more clarity and wholeness and helps you move towards who you want to be at a faster rate. So I hope this little understanding of some of the mechanics of our belief systems helps you to move forward. Because if we go back to our little story about our night spent in Elliot in the back of the Hi-Ace van, the next morning we did survive. We woke up. The guy from the tow truck company, the RACV guy, turned up at the campsite, had a quick look in the engine bay, and after about 30 seconds he said, yep, that's the power steering belt, just drive it on over to the workshop. So we'd spent 6 hours by the side of the road because of a lack of mechanical awareness. We'd driven 2 hours in the opposite direction. We'd gone backwards 2 hours from where we were intending on being, just to be told in the light of the next day that it was just the power steering belt. And the car was actually more than fine to keep driving. And in the end, because the mechanic didn't actually have any of the spare parts required, that's what we ended up doing. We drove the next 4 hours straight on to Katherine, went to a parts shop, and in the car park managed to fit the new belt and an idle pulley wheel in about an hour or so. So it pays to have that little bit more awareness of how things work so that you can tweak them, so that you can use them to your advantage, so that you can keep moving forward towards that more loving, whole, compassionate, kind and generous existence that we were all cut out to be. Thanks for joining me this week. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Baku.